morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told out of Absol Radio. So today, we need to take a bit of a chat about Galar Mine. It is a new stadium card that has just been revealed for Sword and Shield 2 Rebellion Crash over in Japan. It has been translated by the lovely Antoine Boulet, should say revealed on the official YouTube. And this one, I think it's fair to say, is a very good stadium that is going to see a fair amount of play. What does it do? Well, according to the lovely Antoine Boulet, it increases the retreat cost of both active Pokemon by 2 colourless energy. And there are 2 very important things about this. Firstly, it increases the retreat cost by 2, rather than things we've seen in the past, which might be 1. And secondly, it increases the retreat cost of any Pokemon. This isn't just for basics or just for non-GXs or any of that. I'm sure we'll go through a couple of examples as we go through. This is any Pokemon that's in the active for either player, and it's increasing it by 2. And frankly, this is phenomenal. Now, it is a double-sided card, as all stadiums tend to be, and that means that there are going to be times where this hurts you as much as or more than your opponent. So the rule to me seems to be fairly simple here. If you're relying on retreating, you're probably not going to make great use of this card. But if you're relying on switching, you are probably going to make great use of this card. Really is as simple as that. It reminds me very, very much of Team Aqua's base, or secret base, from back in the Double Crisis expansion. The retreat cost of each Pokemon in play, except for Team Aqua Pokemon, is 1 colourless energy more. And that wasn't a huge powerhouse card, but it did see a bit of play here and there. Well, the good news is, ladies and gentlemen, that this is 2 energy, and it's any Pokemon. Now, of course, Team Aqua's secret base, the theory behind that was that you would play it in a Team Aqua deck, which means that your opponent's retreat cost would be increased because they weren't playing Team Aqua's Pokemon, and your retreat cost wouldn't be increased because you were playing them. Makes perfect sense. But there are going to be plenty of Pokemon for whom this is incredibly useful. And one of the biggest ones right off the bat is Absol. You see, we've already got Absol, and Absol already sees a fair amount of play. It is a one-of in a lot of decks. And it's got the ability Dark Ambition. If your opponent's active Pokemon is a basic, its retreat cost is increased by 1 colourless energy. So this is one of those ones that only increases it for basics, but it's still quite good. It's still incredibly useful, it will still help. And this is largely used for things like Jirachi, because Jirachi uses its amazing ability to grab a trainer card. It goes to sleep, it's got a retreat cost of 1, so a skateboard lets you retreat, even though you're asleep. But then Absol comes in and Jirachi is allowed to retreat, and a skateboard brings its retreat cost down to 1, and Absol stops them retreating. But they can still use an energy if they like. Now imagine Galar Mine's in play, and all of a sudden your basic Pokemon's retreat cost is 3 more. When you get to that stage, you pretty much get to the point where you just can't use it. You just can't make it work. And that's what you're relying on. You're trying to get to the point where your opponent looks at retreating and goes, well, that's not viable. Like, all of a sudden, retreating is not a viable option. And sure, there are a bunch of decks around that are playing Switch. That is a thing. A lot of people are playing Switch or similar kind of cards because of things like Jirachi being able to get it in and out of the active. But even then, your opponent can switch out, but they're not going to be able to put a Jirachi in the active and rely on the free retreat, because Jirachi would, with a Galar Mine and an Absol in play, have a retreat cost of 4. Jirachi would all of a sudden sit there with a retreat cost equal to Wailord. Yeah, that's not going to be terribly viable, ladies and gentlemen. What about all of these people that are relying on free retreat Pokemon? Well, all of a sudden they're not free retreat anymore, they've got a retreat cost of 2. Or if they're a basic with an Absol, they've got a retreat cost of 3, and so on and so forth. And then, of course, we've got some Pokemon like Absol itself who will do more damage for each retreat cost. So Absol does a natural 30 damage for 1 darkness, 2 colourless energy, plus 30 more for each colourless energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost, bearing in mind that Absol will mean you do more damage yourself. So now all of a sudden, let's assume 1 Absol and a Galar Mine, you're increasing the retreat cost by 3. So something like a Dedenne, for argument's sake, maybe you've dragged it in the active using a Great Catcher, would not be the first time that interaction has ever happened. All of a sudden, Dedenne's retreat cost isn't 1, in which case you would be doing 60 damage, 30 base plus 30 for the 1 retreat. And it wouldn't be doing 90 damage, which is now the retreat cost of 2 times 60 plus 30, but it would now have a retreat cost of 4, and you'd be doing 150. Okay, that's not quite enough, but whack a Vitality Band on, boom, you've gone and got a KO. And all of a sudden, something like Absol, which really has no business taking giant KOs, is taking KOs. And alright, Dedenne might not be the biggest Pokemon ever, but you know what? It still could be very, very useful. Now, Absol's one of those look at seeing play anyway. But if you want a Pokemon that isn't really seeing a huge amount of play but could really take advantage of this, how about Tangrowth? 1 grass energy, so a much easier attack cost, 10 damage plus 30 more for each colourless energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. Yeah, that's going to be quite nice. Let's say your opponent has something like, let's go Zacian, alright, because Zacian just sees play everywhere at the moment. Zacian comes in with a natural retreat cost of 2, so you should be hitting it for 70 damage. 2 times 30 plus the 10 base. But now you put a Galar Mine in play, and all of a sudden you're hitting it for 130 damage. Except at this point, it's probably fair to point out that Zacian has a resistance to grass. You're down to 100, but you add a couple of, even add 1 Absol, and you're getting a nice easy 2-hit KO. So that could be quite good. Against things that have higher retreat costs and don't have resistance, this just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's kind of my point here. There are many different uses for Galar Mine. Sure, you can go the Tangrowth Absol route to do extra damage, but you can really just stick your Pokemon in the active. And sure, they might be playing a few Switch, but sooner or later they're gonna run out of Switch. And one of the best things you can do here is just stick your opponent in the active and chip away. Attack with whatever you've got, because your opponent isn't in a position to get out the active, and if they're not in a position to get out the active, you can attack with literally anything, because they're just not able to retreat. And then you go and win the game. I like this. I suppose as a side note, we should also mention the Dreadnought from Sword and Shield that does 60 damage base plus 30 more for each energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. It does a little bit more natural damage. It hits weakness on Reshiram and Charizard, and you've got Frostmoth to get the energy on there fairly easily. So maybe Dreadnought actually becomes a pretty good option here. Just putting that out there. There is a lot that this attack can do. You can either do big damage with some of the Pokemon we've pointed out, or you can trap Pokemon in the active. There is a lot that you can do here. Actually, let's give one more example. The Caracosta from Unified Minds. 1 fighting, 2 colourless, 80 damage plus 20 more for each energy in your active Pokemon's retreat cost. Oh, go on then. Let's go for 1 more still. Let's go for the Crocodile from Unbroken Bonds. 50 damage for each energy in your opponent's active Pokemon's retreat cost. Now, this is a Stage 2, which is awkward. I know Caracosta is, but you've got Pokemon Research Lab that really helps you out. But Crocodile can use triple acceleration energy, and Crocodile can do an awful lot of damage very, very quickly. With a single Absol and a Galar Mine, that's a 1-hit KO on a Zacian. You've got to have the Stage 2 out, but if you get the Stage 2 out, this becomes pretty gosh darn good, pretty gosh darn quickly. Make no mistake about it, this is a phenomenal card, and you might not see it used for these weird little attacks, but you will see it used to increase your opponent's retreat cost. Maybe in the days when we had Floatstone, this wouldn't be so good, because Floatstone reduced your retreat cost down to 0. But we don't have that. We got U-turn board and a skateboard that reduce it by 1. We've got air balloon that reduces it by 2. But you know what? If you're increasing it by 2 and they're reducing it by 2, then they're essentially getting no benefit from air balloon. Their air balloon ends up doing nothing for them, and this could be fun. We've got a lot of competition. We've got some really good stadiums around at the moment. Things like Viridian Forest for getting energy. Chaotic Swell as a phenomenal counter stadium. We've still got Shrine of Punishment, which can be extremely good for dropping some extra damage down onto EX and GX Pokemon. We've got some good stadiums, but I tell you what, this, I think, has just joined the ranks. It's a 4 WOSSY card, and honestly, I think that might be a little bit misery on my part. But I'd like to know how you feel. So let me know in the comment section. Go nuts, be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, then head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where you can find out about a whole bunch of games that don't have Pokemon, but are still fantastic. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.